guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am showing you my new pattern, the Raggabrash, which is a gym or overnight bag, depending on which way you want to look at that. It has a lot going on. So it takes a long time, not because it's overly tricky, but just because there is so much. So you've got these two front pockets here. We have mesh pockets on both ends. On the back, we have a zipper pocket that looks like a slip pocket, just to be extra fun. Then on the inside, we've also got some mesh pockets on this side, a zipper pocket on this side, and then my favorite part of the whole bag is this end piece. So if we unzip it, it has a shoe pocket that goes into the bag, which will separate, you know, wet or dirty things from the rest of the bag. So this tutorial does go for a long time, and right at the end I actually realized that I missed this zipper. So at the end there is like a little sewing candy bit to show you how to fix or replace a zipper if it's broken or fallen off, because it's the same basic principle. But this is the bag, so if you'd like to see how to make this awesome gym bag, stay tuned. Let's get started. So I'm going to start with some binding. I know a lot of you are scared of binding, but I promise it's really not so scary once you actually play with it. So I've got here all my mesh pieces. Now in the pattern writing, I did it all in order of when we're going to use it, but because I'm all about efficiency, and that's why you guys watch my videos, I'm going to show you how I do it this way. So I've pre-wound a bunch of bobbins so that I have minimal distractions. And this is just a polyester binding. You do need to singe the end. If you're using your own pre-made binding, you will just, actually you won't need to tuck in the edges yet. You will later though. So this is my internal slip mesh pocket. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take the binding, and you can either fold it in half and crease it first, or you can just place it on. So we're just going to pop it under. I always like to crease the first little bit. I find it a little bit easier to get it to sit where I want. And then I'm just going to clip it. Now, with this particular binding, it has stripes in it so that I can see where the halfway point is. And that does help. So we're just going to continue down. If you're using like your own made binding or bias binding, you can iron it in half and then you can just kind of slot it in, and that will also work for you. So in we go, like so. Clip. I do use a lot of clips. I could also get up and iron this type of binding. The polyester binding can be ironed, but that feels like a whole extra effort with where I'm sitting and trying to do a video. So I just fold it in half, and then I'm just going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch from the inside edge, and that's going to hold everything well, or it's going to snap a thread. Going to be one of those days with my machine, I can already tell. So there are lots of parts to this bag, but none of them are overly tricky. Nah, there's something wrong with my bobbin. Can you guys hear that? Oh, I can hear that. It's just made a right and proper mess. So if we take this bobbin out, I can see that it's, I don't really know what it's done actually, but I'm just going to manually wind it back up. It possibly had like a little, it probably went too far. It does that sometimes. This machine does not like back stitching. Which you don't absolutely have to do. I just like to back stitch, but since it's playing up, I'm just going to ignore it. So I'm stitching 1/8 of an inch from this inside edge. So that's going to catch the back, hopefully. And back stitch. And I missed the whole front section because it's just not my day, but that's all right. So these things happen, right? So I've missed a little bit here. See how it's sitting up? So all I have to do is flip it over. I'm going to stitch, back stitch slowly since it's misbehaving, and then fold it over and just stitch it down. Trying to copy the original holes that we did on the front. So you can barely tell that I've had to do that, as you can see there. So now we just need, there's a lot of big pieces. So we need one of our main lining pieces, and we're just going to line this up along the bottom. And I'm going to use some clips for this, and you want to start to the bottom and then go up for your sides. Because this mesh is a bit stretchy, you do want to make sure that it's going to stay right where you tell it to. Like that. And then we're just going to add some more clips in. So it is a bit stretchy, so it does tend to misbehave. You can use a non-stretchy mesh. It just means that you won't fit as much stuff in the pocket because it won't be able to stretch at all. So it's your choice. This mesh is from Spotlight. It's silver, I think it's just called mesh, but you could also use sports mesh or pretty much any mesh you like. Now I'm just stitching this 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Needle down and pivot up the side like that and back stitch. And pull that out. Alright. I'm also going to trim off the tails as I go. So now I'm going to grab, I've got this square ruler that I don't use very often, but it has become quite handy. So I need to take an erasable something. And we're doing it this side. So when we put the bag together, all the pockets need to be to one end. So we're going to do it here. And hopefully that chalk will be enough to see. Otherwise you can also use a friction texter or anything you like. And I'm going to start at the bottom and go up. This will prevent any puckering down the bottom of the pocket. So come up, back stitch. I'm going to back stitch twice because that is a tension point where that's going to cop a lot for people like stretching the pockets out. So by back stitching twice, I've just given it that little bit of extra stability. You don't have to do that. It is just something that I do. Then I'm going to grab another one of these main lining panels. So this one's going to be the bottom. And we're just going to line that up along the bottom where the mesh is. And we're going to stitch. Now, you do really need to pay attention to the seam allowances in this. Most of my seams are 1/2 inch, but then some of them are 1/4 inch. And it will make a difference. So we're going to back stitch. And so that's now our base done. So like that. Now we're going to do the other side. So we need our 3rd piece. So you should have 3 pieces of this. Now I'm just going to pop that in that drawer there. And we want 2 Tory pockets, which are floating around in here somewhere. Here we go. So there's 2 Tory pockets. The first one, I've already drawn on one because that's what the template's for. So the first one I'm going to take has no markings. It's just the same size. And I'm going to stitch down the edge. Now I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but you can use a big one. This one doesn't really matter as much as some of the others because it's just a pocket. So by doing a bigger seam allowance, you will just have a smaller pocket. So that's your choice. So I folded it in half so it's not so long, and I've just sewed down the 2 edges. We're leaving the bottom open, and I'm just going to trim off the seam allowance on an angle at the corners so that this will turn through nicely. Pop that in the bin. we're going to turn it through. Now, if you're using cotton on the inside, you might want to iron this down so that it sits beautifully and flat. But because I'm using my waterproof canvas, it creases quite well. So I'm just using my finger to push out those corners. I'm going to roll that and then just finger press there. Then the top. Then the other side. And so now, because we did one pocket on this side, we now need to do this pocket on the other side. So I'm just going to take my ruler, line it up, and that's where I want the pocket. So I'm just going to use a couple of clips to hold it in place so that it won't shift while I get it under the machine. Now, you don't have to be this exact. You can eyeball the approximate amount. You just need to make sure that it's not so close to the edge that you won't be able to access it. Just a thought. So we're going to stitch. Actually, before we do that, if you want to, you can stitch along the top of the pocket. So we might do that. I can do it while it's still attached. That won't be a problem. You don't have to do this step, but it does look nice, so we're doing it. Snip and snip. So then I'm going to go top to bottom. You could also go bottom to top. And I'm doing an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance right along that edge. Now, because I've gone this way, I can also just stitch across the bottom, like so, and then go up the other side, and I have less tails to cut off. Like that. Trim off all the tails, not just half of them, because tails get in your way. So now I've got a slip pocket. Done. Next up, we're doing our zipper pocket. So I'm going to fold that in half, and then the side where I've drawn my rectangle goes to the bottom like this. And then we need our other ruler. Or I suppose I can use this one. It wasn't quite what I wanted. I usually use my 1-inch ruler for this. So I'm going to set it up 1 inch above that. And then, so what I do is I just crease it like this so that I can see. The downside to this, with the 1-inch ruler, it just sits against the pocket. This ruler, I have to make sure I don't move it. But that's right. So again, we want to get it to there, and you want to line it up in the center of the slip pocket. So I can just tell by the little bit of excess fabric at the bottom that that's now lined up. To hold this pocket in place, I'm going to put a clip up the top on the diagonal there and there. And now it won't be able to move. So I can pull the ruler out. And I'm now going to stitch the long lines of the pocket. You want to start right in that corner, and we're going to back stitch to make sure that it doesn't come undone. And then stitch along your line that you drew. And back stitch. Swivel around. I'm going to do what's called a jump stitch. I'm just going to jump straight to the other side without cutting all my tails, because it is quicker and actually wastes less thread. And then right in that corner, I'm going to line it up perfectly and backstitch. Trimming all of this. And then I'm going to take some scissors and I'm going to cut roughly in the center. Now, it's not perfectly in the center. That also won't matter. So long as you can see that you're not too far to one side, it won't matter. Then when I get, that's probably about 3/4 of an inch from the end, I'm going to triangle out these corners. Now, I like a bigger triangle. I know a lot of people like smaller triangles. The reason I like the big triangle, I don't think I've ever explained this, is because when you fold it back, I am guaranteed to catch that when I'm stitching around. Like, that is now basically touching the edge. So I've got more chance of grabbing it because it's longer. When it's shorter, you've got more chance of it like slipping through. But some people do prefer the short ones. It's entirely up to you, really. me to turn this pocket through, I'm going to push this up and finger press that side up. And then I'm going to finger press this side down. And then push it all through the hole. Like so. And then I'm going to squash it on the seam, which works out really well because of that bit I did before. And now I have this. Now, if you're using cotton, you'll probably want an iron. All right. Now we need some zipper tape. How big's this bit? Okay, I'm going to use that bit later so that I waste less of it. So I'm going to take this piece and chop off what I need for the Tory pocket. I never pre-cut my zips. Well, I do sometimes in a video, but as a general rule, if I'm not recording, we are not pre-cutting. Because you can get confused about all the different sizes. Whereas if I'm cutting it as I go, I know exactly what's going on. The other option to that is I could make little tabs and clip it to them, but that feels like even more work. So I need to grab some zipper pulls because it's just occurred to me I haven't got any yet. Hold that thought. Using chunky. I love chunkies, if I'm honest. Because they are plain. They go with everything. But you can always attach stuff through the hole. So I do like these ones. They all have their place, really. So, one side, second side, push it through. And then I put my finger, oops, explaining it, I dropped it. So I put in one side about halfway, then I feed through the other side. And I look down the center to make sure that the teeth are even. And then I wrap it around my finger and just wiggle it until it goes on. I don't really use my zipper jig anymore unless some are being extremely stubborn. So we're going to lay this over the top. And I'm going to come to in front of the zipper. So this is why I always put it in the middle. We're going to come to in front of the zipper and start here. We're going to rotate. We're going to go up the other side. And then when we get back to the zipper, instead of going past it the way it is, just going to trim that tail off, I'm going to zip it past me. So now there's no restraints for the rest of the zip. I don't have to move the zipper anymore. I don't have to worry about it being open and then stitched down unevenly. I'm going to run out of, what's it called? Bobbin thread soon. Okay, so I'm just going to make sure I trim off all the tails because this is technically inside the zipper pocket. Then I'm going to fold it down, pull it to one side and line up that bottom. Now you can add clips if you want to this. I'm going to add it to the bottom and then I'm just going to stitch around. So I'm doing, this seam doesn't really matter. You can do whatever you're comfortable with. So you can do 1/4 inch, 3/8, 1/2 inch, whatever's going. Needle down, pivot, pull it back and across. Yep. I saw that. My machine had a temporary moment, but it fixed itself. Oh, not really. All right, so I'm going to restitch the naughty section. I don't know what happened, but it did fix itself, so that's nice. And you'll notice I did stitch the whole pocket close. We finished this bag with binding, so there's no need to turn it through a pocket. So that is now closed, and we now have a slipper pocket and a zipper pocket right where we need it. So now we're going to take this piece, and then you just want to double check that you've done it all right, and you've got your pockets at the same end. And then I'm just going to line this up and stitch her down. Keeping an eye on my bobbin right now because I know it's going to give out soon. So that's most of the inside of the bag now. So you got your base and your two sides. Now we're going to do the top section. But we don't attach it yet. So So our top section consists of, we're going to need our 2 exterior pieces, our 2 lining pieces, and a big length of zipper tape. I'm going to cut, this is obviously too long, I will cut it off when I am ready. Now, if you're new to sewing, what I do, you don't have to do what I do, but this is what I do. I'm going to clip it, the zip and the lining. So these both face right side up, which is why I like to start here. It's easier on your brain to work it out if you're new to bag making, if you do right sides up and then finish with the right sides down, because it feels more like a sandwich. Like pretend the right side up is the botted side. Not that tomato or anything has a downside, but you know what I mean. Right, so I've clipped it. Now I can trim off the excess zipper I've got going on, because we know that that's what we need. Again, you can also pre-do them. So I know I'm going to need a second piece of this, so I can actually cut it now, because it'll be the next zip I do. We do use a lot of zipper tape in this pattern, by the way, just so you know. So now I'm just going to come along and add in my exterior upside down into the clips, so that the right sides are together, and we've now made a zipper sandwich. As ridiculous as it sounds, it will help you if you're new to get it right. So this is obviously less of a seam allowance because the zip's in the way. So what I do with this foot is just running up against the zipper. See, I just ran out of bobbin thread. I knew it was coming. Luckily for us, here's one I prepared earlier. I never get to say that. They used to do it in cooking shows in Australia, if nobody's familiar with that, and while I'm giggling. Alright, so I'm just going to go back about 3 or 4 stitches before I run out of the bobbin, and I'm going to stitch and back stitch. That is now locked in the original set of stitches as well as the new ones, and then off we go again. And back stitch. Trim it off, flip it over. Whoops. Alright, so now, again, because of the binding, we do make this slightly differently to if we weren't doing binding. So I'm going to, first I crease the lining, and then I'm going to pull both of them back and top stitch. So with binding, you do it this way, and if you're not doing a binded bag, you would just pull the top one up. So different stuff for different settings is pretty much how that goes. So I'm just making sure that it's all sitting lovely and flat. And back stitch at the end. And now we just repeat that process for the other side, after we've cut off all our tails, of which there are many. Now you'll notice I haven't put my zipper pull on yet. There is reasons for that. The zipper pull will tend to get in the way of your stitches, especially since we're right up against the zipper tape. So we can do it after this. You watch, I'll forget in the video now, because I do it every time I mention it. It's like this magical thing. My brain's like, it's cool, I've mentioned it, moving on. And I haven't forgotten the D-rings either. We put this on first and then we do the D-rings because it's easier to stitch the thing on, the zipper on, without the D-rings in the way distorting anything. So that's why I haven't done that yet. It's not that I forgot. And you can do it in the other order where you sew your D-ring on first. I just don't like to. But you're quite flexible with the order in which you do this bag. You could build the whole exterior first and then do the lining. You could do the ends first. Get rid of those pieces. Whatever makes you comfortable. I would, however, recommend attaching the lining to this before the exterior. That is the one thing I would recommend. Because it'll be a lot heavier with the exterior than with the lining. So it's always easier to attach lining first and then exterior to like main pieces like this. All right, I'm gonna move Scully because it's gonna get in the way. And again, we're gonna pull both of them back, and I'm just gonna finger press this seam so that my waterproof canvas sits nicely. Okay. So we're gonna stitch both of them again. And backstitch. Done. Trim the tails. Now we're going to put our zipper pull on. Now, depending on if you've got a pattern or not, mine's non-directional, so it doesn't matter for me. But if you've got a directional pattern, sit it so that it's facing the right way, and we're going to put our zipper pull so it closes over this side. And I'm going to throw it on the floor. I swear it's not a video until I drop something. We should play bingo with me, because I don't intentionally repeat myself in all my videos. It's just the advice I have. All right, I'm going to leave that in the middle. Right, binding. 6 inches. We need 2 of them because we have 2 D-rings. We're going to feed this on, and I'm going to fold it over. Now, if you don't have binding or you want to use the fabric, you definitely can. You just need to make sure that it's twice as wide and fold it into the center, like we do in a lot of other patterns. So, now, I'm going to get some clips. Put that on. Now, because it minds the binding, it doesn't matter. Or webbing, binding. Now, I'm going to take the lining piece and fold it out of the way. And then I'm going to line this up here and stitch it down. So I want to stitch all the way up and along. It's going to give extra stability, because this, you have to remember, will take the whole weight of the bag when it's on someone's shoulder. So the reason I didn't just shove it in the seam is because I did actually try that, and my husband broke it in a day. So if he can break it, everyone will break it. Here's my good tester of how strong things are. So we're going to stitch up. Needle down, pivot, go across, and then back down. Now, if you know that you're going to put a lot of weight in the bag, what we can also do, which is not the pattern, but let's do it, is we're going to do the diagonals. We're going to stitch up diagonally, and then across the top again, and you'll notice I'm just spinning this round and round in circles, but it's fine. Across the top, and then diagonally back down to here, like that. So that is now not going anywhere ever. So now we want to come and do it to this end. So if I've got this end, I've got it on the right hand side. So then when I flip it to this end, we're going to do the same thing and put it on the right hand side so that the weight is distributed diagonally across the bag. Which is why we do these things. Now I can eyeball this. It's a skill. Repetition is key. I have already made quite a few of these, so I can eyeball how far across we need, but you can also measure it. You can also just make up your own amount, really. There is no rule saying that you can't. I like to think of my patterns more as guides. So if you want to change something, you totally can, which is why I'm doing this. Alright, there's a tail there, push it into the bin. Now we're done. So I can take my lining. Now, we want this closing to the left. And then we're going to put our pockets at the end that it closes. Right, and I'm just going to take the lining from our zipper and then the all lining interior that we've already made, line it up and stitch it down. And so then we bring it around. So we're making like a circle. We're technically making a square, but you get the idea. So then we're going to just grab this lining piece. You just want to make sure we're not stitching it to the exterior because that's for later. And we're making a really big loop. Also, if I have to stop the video again, I apologize, but I am expecting a package today. I got an email. And no, I don't know what it is. And backstitch. And trim the tails. So that is now the lining pretty much done. And we've got our zipper in. Now, if you're worried that your zipper is going to come off for any reason, you can just backstitch along the zipper there if that's concerning you at all. But I'm good, so I'm going to pop that out of the way. And we're going to go on to whatever these are. So what's this? This is the back. And then that is, I don't know, put that aside. We don't need that yet. So this is our back. So the first thing I want to do is take the back top piece and one of my handles. Now I've pre-cut this. I also plan on putting these in kits for you. So if you buy the Raggabrash strap kit, I will do strap kits and hardware kits separate so that you can mix and match. But you will get your crossbody strap, the back strap, and your handles. So we're going to take one of the handles and my ruler and measure in and then clip it down. Something keeps beeping in my kitchen. It's really starting to bug me because I don't know what it is that's beeping. The beeping itself doesn't annoy me. It just annoys me that I don't know what it is. Now these handles look like they're close together, but the reason for that is because we couldn't have the handles like this because of the front pocket. And they do still hold the weight of the bag quite well. So don't freak out too much that they look really close together. They are fine. Then I'm also going to take my marking chalk. You can also use anything that marks, really. And I'm going to mark a line like that. That's where we're going to stitch to. That is in the pattern, obviously. Alright, so I'm going to stitch along the bottom and then up the edge. So we're going to do the crisscross on this again because this is like a load-bearing strap. Scully's in my way. You can just stay over there. Down. And then diagonally. I know we're swiveling this a lot, but that's just because there's not a lot of space that we actually need to stitch. Needle down, stitch, up. So by drawing the line, it does actually help you see where you need to stop. Otherwise, again, you can eyeball if you don't want it to be uniform. Or if you can eyeball an approximate size pretty well, you don't have to draw the line. Like I didn't draw the crisscross line because I can see where that is. But if you're worried that your line's going to be crooked, take a ruler and draw the line you need to stitch. There is nothing wrong with that. Okay. Grab one of our lining pieces for this. And yes, the exterior piece is bigger. Bear with me. There's method to my madness. I promise you. This is actually coming together pretty quickly, to be honest. That's not it. That's not it. Where's that piece of zip I cut? See, this is why I tend to not cut them. Then you have to go hunting for it. I also don't need my zipper pull yet because it will just get in the way. So, same as before, we're just not going to do it. And same as before, we're going to clip it to the lining with the zipper facing the right side up. You can put them as close or as far apart as you feel comfortable. There is no right or wrong answer. You will notice I never do it the same. My brain just likes to be different every time, apparently. Sometimes I'll use more, sometimes I'll use less. Sometimes I won't clip it all, but I am trying to teach good habits. So here we are. And because this has got a chunkier bit, I do like to clip it in place so it won't shift. And also because waterproof canvas is slippery. So all in all, there's a lot going on. And I managed to put that one approximately right in the middle. That was pretty good guess. All right, so I've clipped them together. So the top one's right sides down, zipper sandwich. And then again, foot goes up against the zipper. Now, if you've got a zipper foot, it just means you'll get closer. In which case, you need to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm gonna go slowly over there. Now this is nice strong thread, so I'm not too worried about it breaking. However, if you don't use M40, which I believe is Tex 70, I've been learning the American conversion, what you can do is you can come here and come stitch. And then we're going to stitch a 3rd line. So this is just reinforcing that strap into that seam so that the actual seam doesn't rip. So the weight is taken by our cross, but the joining part is just as important. So I am going to reinforce that. And if you're using a less strong thread, I would suggest you do the same. I actually probably don't need to do this at all with this thread, but I'm showing you so that you know, because not everybody's machine can handle this size thread. So this is how we work around that problem. Doesn't mean you have to go out and buy a new machine. It just means we have to, you know, do some extra stitching. Okay. I'm going to take the next lining piece. I'm going to flip it over so I'm on the other side of the zipper. And I'm going to clip it, and then we're going to put this aside and do the other bit. But again, I'm all about eliminating pattern pieces. And these are all very large pieces because this is a very large bag. You're also going to notice when I do the second one, because this has got the strap and the way we stitched it on, it makes it quite stiff. So I will use more clips on this side than the other side because it's trying to fight me more because of the weight of the other bit, if that makes sense. So the weight of the strap is distorting this, so I have to use more clips to keep it in place the way I want. Probably not that many more, that was excessive. Okay, so you can see I've used nearly double the amount of clips because we need this to be out of the way, but without pulling on the fabric too much. So pop that aside and then grab the exterior bit and your short piece of strapping, wherever that has gone. Did I drop it? I dropped it. Of course I dropped it. Ta-da! I need a bigger cart, except that will then defeat the purpose. Now, we're going to pretend that this is the top of the fabric, so it's facing me in the right direction. We are going to fold it in half and make a little snip in the center so that I can see where it is. So that is the center. I'm then going to take my ruler, and the center of my ruler, I'm going to line up with the center of the bag. So now I just need the even amount on each side, or I can fold this in half, line that up with the center, and that will go there like that. So that is where our strap will go. Now it looks like it's too far down. You just need to trust me. If you're worried, we can add some double-sided tape, although I'm not sure how successful we're going to be with this type of strapping. But stranger things have happened. So what I can do is put a piece diagonally on, and it may help stick and it may not because of the polyester nature of this. But it is worth trying, especially if you're worried. Or you can make your strap and just do like a double fold and just make sure you tuck the edges in. You don't have to use the strapping. I'm just doing it because I think it looks cool. But you could make this out of fabric without a problem. See, the backing won't come off. It's being stubborn now. Right, so in half. with the edge lined up like that. Line it up along the edge of the ruler. Obviously you need the right size ruler to be doing that. And then just kind of push it down. I don't know how well that's going to hold, but we'll see. So then I'm going to do what we did before and rule the line that I want to stitch up to. You can stitch this further. That is quite a large gap. But the reason it's large is because for people that do like heavy weightlifting, they tend to have like a back-based belt, so they'll be able to slot it through there. If you're not doing that, you can just make it shorter so it'll go over your suitcase. That's your choice. But that's why I've got it so big, for anybody that is wondering out there what I think I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. And having a husband that actually does gym stuff was really helpful, because I went and asked all these friends all the things that they wanted in a bag. Yank. So I'm going to stitch and back stitch. And again, we're doing the crisscross because I said so. Now you can just do the crisscross like I've done here, or you can sew the edges as well. I've just done the crisscross because this won't be really load bearing. So I'm not super worried that it'll come off. So I just did like an hourglass shape. I haven't stitched those two edges there, but I'm not worried. You can do it. I'm just not going to because my brain decided not to. But there is more than one way to do something. So technically that little bit there's not stitched down, but the strap's not going anywhere, I promise. So, keeping it right sides up so that you know, especially if it's not directional. So this is the top here. We're going to put the top into the zip now. Now that we've added our little bit. Now, I haven't really thought about where I'm putting a logo on this yet. You could put it on the front on the outside, although it is a really good spot for embroidery. Or I've just had a thought, and you can put it on the slip pocket before we make that. Now, little trick, turn it upside down so lining's right side up. You're going to find it easier to stitch along here this way. Right, because the lining's a lot more flexible, so it's not trying to fight you, whereas the other way, it would. So we're doing this one lining sides up. And we're going to back stitch at the end, and we're going to trim off the tails. And then we are not going to flatten that out and do top stitching like we did before. Instead, what we're going to do is take our pocket and line it up along the bottom and stitch it down. Now you can do this in stages. This way I don't have to use clips, so I'm just going to stitch this. I'm basing it, so it's only 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm not even going to back stitch because we're about to do it again in a second. So you could have also just clipped that. In the pattern I clip it. And then we're going to take the exterior and we're going to bring it down to also be in line with the pocket pieces. So it's going to have this weird lump. That is what we're aiming for. If you don't have a weird lump, it actually means something's gone wrong somewhere. So again, I'm just going to line it up. Now I could have lined up all three, but we all know that I don't like to do that. I like to do things in twos. So again, we're lining it up right along the bottom. You're not going to see any of this stitching, so it doesn't matter. Also, I didn't backstitch it because it doesn't also matter. So now that we're laying it down, I'm going to start with my hands here and I'm going to push up to create a fold like this. All right, that is now going to make it an invisible slip pocket looking zipper pocket. All right, so now that you've got it up, like that. You want to get a nice crease. You also might want to iron it. Then I'm going to pull down this bit, flip it over, and top stitch the crease. Ta-da! Now, look at that. If you want to, you can also come along and top stitch the edge. Just make sure it is within a very small seam allowance. But you're going to see that stitching later. I always like to stitch this bottom to top. Didn't have to go all the way to the top, but I did. And so that is now our back piece done. This fabric looks awesome as this bag. Now, hold the zip so it's going to close to the left. So the top piece will technically lead onto the back. So this is where I want to attach this. And the reason I'm explaining this into the video is because otherwise your zip will close the other way. So if you're left-handed, you may want to do it the other way. So it's just things that you need to think of. The other option is you could have put 2 zips on the top, and that would counteract all of those problems. Then you just have to think about where you want the pockets in relation to the front of the bag. And it doesn't matter if you did this wrong and you did it the other way. It wouldn't matter. It's all much for muchness. So now we're going back to our bigger seam allowance, and we're going to stitch, back stitch, and then zoom along. I'm not zooming too fast because you got to remember the straps are here. And back stitch. Pull it out, trim it off. Part of me really wishes I had a thread cutter, but I'd still have to trim it off anyway. It's not a big deal. Alright, I'm going to just come over here and crease that. So that is now the top and the side of the bag. So while we're here, we may as well stitch our base on, which is one more of these pieces. Pick whichever one you don't like. Or you could even put vinyl on the bottom if you wanted to, or a different colour. Or if you've done a print, you could put a plain colour on the bottom, if that saves you a bit of money. Or if you just don't have enough of that fabric, you could put a different colour on the bottom and nobody would notice. Really? Depends on what you're using it for. So that's now 3 of the 4 sides of the exterior. Look at us go. Oh, I didn't. Okay, so I haven't cut this yet, so I could do it on camera, obviously. So we're going to need one main panel. These 2 pieces, remembering that one is a little bit longer. And we're going to need our handle. And some zipper. And our little bits. And there's a lot. So hold that thought. That's for that. Alright, I'm going to get organised and then I'm going to start up again. Hold that thought. Got all my stuff. So let's do this. So first up, I needed to grab all the bits for the front. But what we actually need to do is take our front panel, flip it over, and then take the piece. And I'm sorry that there's so many bits, but it's big, so there's a lot of sticky taping to do. I do apologise for that, but there was no other way to get it done. So I'm just going to line it up and then trace around it. Now this is just a normal pen because I'm on the back and it won't matter. We're just going to trace the shape out, pretty much. I will have acrylic templates for this soon enough, which will make that even easier. Because now I need to cut that. With the acrylic template, I could just use a rotary cutter and go around. Although you really wouldn't want to miss. So, I'm just going to take some scissors. And cut around the shape You want to be nice and precise with this too. Because we're keeping both of these pieces. It's not like I'm cutting out part of it and turfing it. We keep both of them. And that way the pattern will still match. Now, I have done a couple of bags where I cut this out and you can use a different colour for the front pocket, in which case this piece would then become useless, but whatever's going, honestly. So I'm going to put away this bit actually and do the front. So, first off, we need our 2 bits of zipper, which I have already cut. And then you should have like a lot of these like weird little bits. So there should be 2 the same size and 1 that's slightly smaller. So we want the slightly smaller one. I'm going to go lining side up, zipper right side up. Now I'm going to clip this because it's little and fiddly and likes to move. And I've learned that the hard way. So I put 1 clip on each side. Then I'm just going to take this bit right sides down. Now I haven't interfaced this. You can. It doesn't matter if you have. It's not really doing much other than looking pretty and separating the zip. So that is entirely up to you if you do it or not. We're going to stitch across. And then I'm just going to pull both of them back like this and top stitch. Like so. Then we're going to trim off all the tails that are left. So that's one side. Now we're going to take our other side. So lining right sides up, zipper right sides up, clip it together because it's tricky and slippery. And then the idea of this, right, what we're trying to mentally do is bring this around and up. But because it's so short, we just kind of have to do it in a mini scale and you'll get this weird bend twisty thing. I know it looks like it's not going to work out, but I promise you that it will. You just have to trust the process, right? So now you've got like this weird twisty looking thing. See, this already slipped. Because it is little, this is probably one of the trickier parts of the bag. This and the side zip. So we're going to stitch. And then I'm going to show you, right? So now that we've done the weird thing, if you just pull, see, it just straightens itself out. Although I've stitched that a bit crooked, so we're going to go back and fix that. Pull and top stitch down. You don't have to do the top stitch, but I do think it looks pretty, so I do encourage it. So now you should have this. We are going to take 2 zipper pulls and put one up on each side. So I'm going to crack the zip and then feed it on one half, then the other half, line it up and pull, other side. Other side, line it up and pull. So now you should have your 2 zipper pulls on. So now we can take these longer bits and we're going to do the same to the ends. So we're going to go right sides up, zipper right sides up, exterior down. And again, I'm going to want to clip this because it's tricky and slippery. So I put 1 clip each side of the zipper tape because I find that that helps me. Like that. Then we're going to go to the other end and do the same. Again, think about your fabric if it's directional. I probably should have done a directional print to do that, but this is fabulous. So we're doing this. One and 2. Okay, so now we're just going to stitch it again. And then because I've clipped both of them, I can bring this one around and chain stitch them because we all know I love a good chain stitch. And then I can clip this one off like this, pull them both back, and again with the top stitching. And if you all want to know where I got this fabric, it is just a blender from Spotlight. It's in the quilting section. It's fabulous. Okay. Now we have this beautiful long strip. So I'm going to fold my exterior main pocket piece panel, say that 10 times really fast, in half and snip it at the top center so that I can find where the top center is. You want to do a really small snip because, again, with the small seam allowance. Now this is one of those times where we're going to put the right sides together now, and we're going to line up the center of the fabric with the center point we just made. We're going to add some clips. I'm going to put one right in the middle. Like that. And I consciously just put a different color for the middle clip and then put like the same color around it so that it stands out. Because we're going to need to know where that middle is again in a minute. The other thing you want to do is when we get close to this corner, which is pretty much now, what we want to do is unzip it so that it bends around that corner easier. Right, because we want it to sit right on the edge. So you'll obviously need more clips in the corners, and then you can spread them out a bit more as you get further down. And the idea is that there will be a little bit that hangs off this edge. It's meant to be like that. So trust the process. I need to stop saying that. I think that's my new slogan. Right, so again, I'm just going to zip it up a little bit more and then undo it so that it will bend around that corner better. Lots of clips in the corners so that the zip's going to sit exactly where you want it to. Done. Now, we're not stitching that yet. We are now going to take the smaller of the two pieces. So this one's a little bit longer at the end. We want the one that's identical. And then again, we're going to find the center. I'm just going to crease it because we're going to use it right now. And with right side down, I'm going to add it to that center clip. So that's why I did it in a different color. I could see exactly where it was. I didn't have to think too hard. Then we're just going to move along and add this into the clips. And trust me when I say to do this in 2 steps rather than trying to do it all at the same time, because your zipper's going to frustrate you if you do it that way. So I'm just one clip at a time, opening it up to add it in. Now we are going to have to be careful of our zipper pulls this time. So now we're going to stitch it, and I'm going to stitch it lining sides up. So I'm starting here, and I'm stitching and I'm back stitching to lock it all in. I'm going slowly. This is now against the zipper teeth because of the type of foot I use. If you use a different foot, that might not work the same way for you. We're getting close to this curve, but look how easy that was. Tidy up my clips. And around the curve again. Now I'm up to the zipper pull. I'm going to zip it past where I'm going so that it won't distort my beautiful straight lines. And I just ran out of bobbin thread. Of course I did. So the first bobbin wasn't totally full, but this is currently bobbin number 3. I may still need another one yet. Don't know. There's a lot of sewing to do though. And this, because I'm using a thicker thread, it obviously wouldn't hold as much as if I was using a thinner one. Alright, so I'm going to start a couple of stitches back, and I'm going to stitch and back stitch to lock in the last set and the new set. And again, it's okay that it hangs off a little bit. We are going to deal with that later. So, since the whole bottom's open, turn it right sides out, making sure that you push out those corners properly. And this is what you should now have. Look how beautiful our corners came out. So now I'm just going to top stitch on this panel, both the layers. Around the bend. You also might find that you don't need to move your zippers. Now I'm just going to leave all this excess for now. We're just going to ignore it. We don't care about that bit. We have a zip and it's on. Now pop that aside and grab your other handle and the funky shape that we've cut out. And then we're just going to measure our handles like we did on the back piece, so that the handles will be perfectly even. Now you will notice, because of this, this lines up just inside the curve, which was very, very intentional. Like that. And the other side. So we go smooth it out and then bend it around so there's no twists in it. And the true clips helps it from twisting. Grab the Chaco pen again, measuring the line that we want to do like that. And then we're going to stitch the cross stitch. It's not actually cross stitch, but you get the idea. Oh. So, I'm going to go around on the edge first, and then I'll do the cross stitch part. Because this handle will hold the whole way to the bag, so we want it to be glorious. And down and back stitch. So that's one on. Now let's do the other one. Then I'm going to have to stop for some water and to turn the aircon on because it's getting quite warm in my room. I know I don't like stops, but it's getting very warm and I'm in a very thin dress. Needle down, diagonally up, around, diagonally down, and back stitch. Okay, so now I've got the full cross in a box, as opposed to what we did on the back, which was just a cross. And I'm going to go get some water and turn the aircon on and be right back. Right, my aircon will kick in any second. So, I'm going to fold this in half to find the center on the inside part. And then you can just add a clip, or you can make a snip like that. And then we're going to take our beautiful exterior. Oops, not that one yet. So the idea is this is going in like this for people that are super visual. So what we want to do is we want to flip this up and put it in the center like that. And so then again, we're going to come along with right sides together and we're going to clip it. Now this is the tricky part because of the curve that we're going to try and make it do. It will do it. You just want to make sure that your zipper's open so that it's got more lenient room to actually flip. And again, I will be putting in the lining piece, but I'd like to do this bit first because I want to get around this curve. Right, see where we're going with this? You just bend it. It doesn't matter if it's not sitting flat. It's not currently what we're trying to make it do. So we're going to clip like so. Then I want to come and do this side. So I'm actually going to kind of bring it down and around. And you really want to focus on the curves, because it's quite easy to get them wrong. So I'm putting lots of clips that are basically touching each other to get around that curve. Oops. And then as we get further down, it becomes straight and much easier to deal with. That's better, my aircon just kicked in. So clip, clip, and clip. So this is now what we've got, and it's not going to sit straight, so don't even try and make it. Like, just allow it to do its own thing. So then we're going to take our last piece of this, again with the folding in half, and then we're just going to add it in to all of our clips here. Like that. So this one should be much easier to add. And then again, we're going to stitch it with the lining right side up, or wrong side up, but on the top. On the top's probably a better sentence. Add it into the clips, and it should perfectly line up if all's gone to plan. If it hasn't all gone to plan and it's not perfectly lined up, don't freak out, because we can just make the pocket a bit smaller if it hasn't lined up, and I'll explain what that means in a minute. Sometimes it's easier to face you instead of away from you with this. As you can see, it's being stubborn. I'm in the tricky corner. I'm going to add an extra clip in there to hold it all in place. And then the easy straight bit. Right, so this is now what we've got. We've got it all lined up. So I'm going to start here in the corner, or at the end. And I'm holding it up as a 3D object, which by now I'm sure you're all familiar with. And if not, this will be the easiest way to get around that curve, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going nice and slowly. There is no hurry. I want to make sure it's all going to work out. And as you can see, once we get to the straight bit, I can go a little bit faster. Then, flip it over, lay it flat, and voila, the process worked. Now sometimes you might get a little bit of puckering where the curve is. You just kind of have to maneuver the fabric. So I'm basically Tory squishing that corner so that it'll sit flat. It will do it. It just sometimes needs a reminder who's boss. Now, if all's gone to plan, all the layers should line up along the bottom, right? And your zip will actually sit up like a little bit. Like this. Now at this corner, it's not going to look as even as you'd hoped, but don't freak out because we've got a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so these bottom corners aren't as important as I made them out to be. So what we're going to do is kind of lay it down like this, and you'll have like a bit of a lump. So we are going to, like, I'm going to put my finger under here and kind of hold it up a little bit. And then just stitch across the bottom. And we're going to catch all the layers of the pocket. Now, if for whatever reason the back pocket doesn't line up, what you can do is you can just pull off this front section and just stitch the two pocket pieces together where they do line up. It just means your pocket will be a little bit more shallow if it's outside of the range of the seam allowance. But you'd be surprised at how much or little it matters. Okay, my lining got a little bit longer there. That's all right. We can just trim that off. This pocket, even though it's tricky, is quite flexible with how it ends up. So don't stress too much. Honestly, it's not worth it. So fold it in half, lining up the long or the short edge, sorry, like that. Pinch it, mark it. And then we're going to rule a removable line up the center. And this is going to separate our pocket pieces. Because that's what we want. We want 2 separate pockets. Oops. And then I'm just going to stitch from bottom to top to create the 2 separate pockets. Now, if you don't want that, you can just have it so it's one big long pocket. That is an option. You just skip this one step. But I like the idea of separate pockets. We're going to stitch up to and over that bit. And I double back stitched because it's a habit to reinforce seams. Okay. So now with this excess that we've got going on, you can now trim it off if it's bothering you at all. Like that. But that's your front done. So now we're just going to attach this to the rest of what we've got going on here. So the short bit here will be attached to the top bit like this. And I am going to clip it together because of that strap that's going to otherwise be in my way. And then I can stitch the bottom together as well. And then we've just got our sides. Right. In we go. Now, because it's so big, it's probably going to catch on your table. So just be conscious of that. And backstitch. Now, we want to have it so that the lining is going to be on the outside when we fold it through. Whoops, just dropped everything. My bad. I might need to do some clips on this because it's not sitting where I'm telling it to. Clip. Just a couple of clips to hold it in place. And then with all this excess, I'm just kind of going to roll it so that it's less big. Nope. Stop it. My thread's being naughty. It's created a loop. Okay, there we go. So you can stitch it from either side up, it doesn't really matter. If you're more comfortable not looking at this, do it from the other side. Alright, so we're stitching the bottom shut. So now we're going to take the lining and I'm going to put my hand inside the lining, grab here and pull it so that the lining goes over the exterior, like this. And so now we've got a single loop. So I'm going to stitch all the edges together because it's going to make it easier in a minute or 5 once I've done the next section. So I'm going to come to where all the seams are, match up the seams and clip them together. Another seam here. So we're going to use a lot of clips for this. We're going to do it to the both ends. We're just going to clip seam to seam, making sure everything lines up. And then we're just going to stitch it together with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. You want it to be nice and close to the edge so that we won't see these stitches later. This is also going to seal off the zipper now. bit doesn't really need it. Right, so it's a lot of clips, but it means I'll be able to stitch together quicker. So we're just doing 1/8 of an inch right on the edge, stitching all the layers together. Now it is still a circle, so I'm just going to still pull it out. Bringing it round and round and round. And we're back to the start. Yay! Now, if anywhere's a little bit wonky, which I can see right here, I'm like a tiny smidgeny bit out. I am just going to trim that off because the smoother this is, the easier it's going to be to sew it in a minute. Okay, so anywhere that's a little bit kind of wonky, we're just going to straighten that up like so. So now it's got a nice small edge. Oh, I've missed all of this section. Of course I did. There we go. So we're stitching the lining and the exterior together so it becomes one piece, because it's now easy to work with as one piece instead of two separate ones. So then we're going to do the same on this end. So I'm going to line up the seam allowance. I'm sorry I have to do this in my lap, but it's huge. We want the clips to face inwards too because of the way we're stitching it. So again, seam allowance to seam allowance. Clips facing inwards. I've got a little bit of a loop here, so I'm just putting that excess back through the other clips. And then the bottom one, so again, lining up seam to seam. Next one, you're just slowly moving around the bag. You can do it any which way you want. You don't have to clip it. You can actually just hold it and do it. But because we want such a small basting space, you do want to clip it, in my opinion. Of course, you can ignore me. I won't be offended. Promise. Alright. Next side done. Doesn't matter where you start. Wherever works for you is fine. Bring the next section round. It gets easier as you go because there's less clips to be in your way. But don't skip this step. Please, please, please make sure that you stitch them together. We all know I don't do things unless I have to. Alright, so again, with this clip, the snips, and just cut off any kind of doggies or anything hanging out. Or any kind of fraying. You can also just trim off the fraying so there's not in your way. Depending on what fabric you've used, some will obviously fray more than others. So if you're using the waterproof canvas from Spotlight, for example, for the exterior, which is what I did for my husband, it frays a lot. I spent a lot of time melting those edges because it was driving me insane. But that is now like a sausage. So we can pop that aside and let's do our ends. So we're nearly done. We've just got our 2 ends to attach and create. So we're going to start with our mesh. And our binding. So we're going to put binding over the mesh at the top edge. You could also, if you wanted to, put some elastic and it would then be super elasticized. Depends on what you want. I did try it with elastic. It is very tricky to do, just so you know. But I did do it with elastic on my husband's bag and then decided that that was tricky and horrible. And I didn't want to do it. You could also just do binding and then thread elastic through it if you wanted to. You got a lot of options. My bag is just one way. I'll probably end up hacking it and doing another video, I'm sure. So for example, a guy came around yesterday to speak to my husband and he suggested we put a grommet in this end, or one of these ends that I'm doing, so that you could have your phone charging cord. So if you've got like an external charger, you could have the charger in the bag, but your phone in one of these pockets, and it could be charging. And I'm like, that's very clever. So that's an add-on that you could do. All right, I'm gonna grab the second one and just continue on. We're gonna do both of them. Chain stitching, gotta love it. You do use a lot of binding in this pattern, by the way. You bind both ends and all the mesh. So there's a lot going on. And to the end and back stitch. Trim that off. Trim it in half. Excellent. Now I'm separating these into perfectly half. You could also have 2/3 and 1/3, depending on what you want to put in the ends. So that's entirely up to you. So we're going to take our exteriors. And then, whichever way is the bottom, you know what? I actually think I like the look of that better, so I'm going to put that on top. I'm going to start clipping along the bottom. So you want to match up the corner. It took me longer than I care to admit to get that corner to match up on the bigger bit, but we got there. And by we, I do mean me. And then once we get here, we're going to start clipping upwards and we're going to move it. So it's bigger. That's the idea. So that it will sit out. So you want to clip from bottom to top so that there's no weird distortion. Like that. You want to make sure that they are even. So that's one. Let's do the second one. So now I'm going to fold it so that it's got this excess part. Now you could just actually leave the pocket as one whole end open to shove whatever you need to in there. You could have one in half and then one just a whole pocket. It depends on your needs or the needs of the person wanting it. The idea I had was split it in half and then one side's a shaker and one side's a drink bottle. But that will also depend on what size your stuff is. So again, I'm just going to top stitch around the very, very edge. Done. Put this one aside for later. You can also skip these mesh pockets if you don't want anything on the end. Or you could do a fabric one. But the mesh just allows you to be able to see while you're training. But if you instead want this for like a go bag, you might not need to see through the mesh. You could do this in fabric. I would just cut two, put them wrong sides together, and then bind it. All these things would work. Okay, so I'm going to fold it wrong sides together like this. And I'm going to start here and I'm going to push out. What this is going to do is it's going to find the center of the netting so that I can crease it, as well as the center of the pocket, which is where I'm going to stitch it. And so then I'm going to stitch from here. And then I'm going to lay down the center point where my line is and then just stitch up. And that's how I magically did that. No ruler required. Done. So now you've got two pockets that open out. And because it is a slightly stretch mesh, you will fit a lot in those pockets. We're going to do the same to this one. But again, if you wanted to, you could just keep it not like that. So again, with the folding, start, line it up. Where's my fold? There's my fold. So there's the center, and just sew up. And then I'm going to double back stitch here because that's a stress point and we don't want it to pop. Should always reinforce your stress points like that. Grab a lining bit and we're going to put them so that right sides will be out. And then we're going to baste this together. So this is one end. This is the easy end. We're going to do the easy end first and we're going to end on the tricky one. It's only tricky because we've got 4 curves to put a zip around. It's not actually that tricky. And then attaching the flap to the bag is even easier. We also have to make our shoe pocket, which again, you can skip if you want to and just access the bag from the side. I want all these to line up nicely. So I'm using a lot of clips. And then again, we're just gonna 1/8 of an inch from the edge, top stitch around. To join these two together. Now this end goes at the end where the pockets are on the lining. Okay, so my pockets are here. So this is the end I want it on. But first what we need to do is find all of the center points. So we want center, top and bottom. And then both center sides. So we just fold it the other way. The beauty of it being a square. Okay, so now I've got the 4 points of this. We actually only need to find 3 points of the bag because this zipper, like the top main zipper, is in fact a center point. So lucky me. 1, and then we're gonna put those two together, come out to the side. There's a center point. And there's a center point. Ta-da! So 4 center points on everything. I'm going to start with the top. So the top and the top, we're going to put right sides together. So I'm going to put this inside and I'm going to line that up. Now because I'm on this machine, I want my clips to face the square piece. If I was on my cylinder arm, the clips would face the other way. So just keep that in mind depending on how you're using your machine, because you sew it slightly different. I did think about doing this on the cylinder arm, but the flatbed table is helpful for such big pieces. The other option, if you have both machines, is sew all the flat bits here and then go over to the other machine to finish up. Alright, so I've done the top and the bottom. Then I'm going to come to the side. You'll notice that I'm currently avoiding the curvy side, corners. We're going to do that last. Because once everything else is lined up, it should then just go in quite easily. Dropped another clip. What can I say? I'm just a careless person. Alright, so see how the end now is just, it's just working. Now the seam allowance on this is 1/4 inch. However, if you're struggling with that, you can do 3/8 of an inch. And nobody's going to notice. Pretty sure I wrote that in the pattern too. Like, nobody's going to notice that the bag is 1/8 of an inch shorter on that side than that side. So if you are struggling with it, you can do 3/8 of an inch on the end. The other one, that won't work out though because there's a zipper there. Just so you know. And that's why we did this. Otherwise, if I had have done a full 1/2 inch on this end, we would have had to put all the straps on crooked and it would have hurt people's brains because you wouldn't understand why I was doing it. So that's why we've done it this way. So, there is a lot of clips on there. You will notice that I have used a lot. Nothing wrong with that. So now I'm going to start roughly at a middle piece. I don't care if it's top, bottom, or whatever. And I'm going to stitch around. So I'm going to go nice and slow. I'm using the foot thickness as a guide to how much seam allowance I'm using. As we get into the corners, we want to make sure that nothing's shifting because we want to stitch it all straight bits are quicker. The curves are the tricky parts, but we all know that. But if you keep squishing it and moving it around like I am, it's going to work out for you just fine. So you'll notice on this curve, I kind of tilt the whole bag on an angle so that I can easily bring it around the curve that's in there. Like that. So I go straight and then I'm going to, again, bring it on an angle so that I can get around that curve. Home stretch, and we're back to the start. Oh no, I ran out of bobbin thread. That sucked. And on a curve too. Oh well. That's fine. So I need to do another bobbin. But I prefer it to run out on this end than the other one. The other one's not so much tricky as fiddly. And people mistake fiddly for tricky. When I'm doing a bobbin, I always lift my foot up too because you don't want to damage the bottom of the feet with the feed dogs. And I'm going to do a full bobbin because the other end's got some stuff going on. While that's winding, I can go back and put all my clips on. Like that. Alright, so I've got a bobbin. I'm going to tie this one onto the old one. So I don't rethread my machine, by the way, guys. It's good to sometimes show you this. I just tie it to the old piece and then pull it through because it's quicker. You just can't do this bit because the moving part will create a knot. So long as it's out of the moving part of the machine, you're good to go. And I do this pretty much every time. Unless I accidentally pull it out and have to rethread, I will just pull it through. And as you all tell me, it is not lazy, it is efficient. It's just a little bit lazy, but whatever. So, final corner. You'll notice I'm kind of tucking it under to really get that rolling around. trim off the tails. Now, before we go any further, we want to open it up. And you want to check. I'm going to hold my hand here so that the zip doesn't go all the way. But you want to check and make sure that you've got everywhere. So right here, I missed a little bit. And I could literally poke my finger through it, which we don't want. So I'm just going to make sure that that can't actually happen. You can even turn the whole bag out the right way if you want to check all your corners. I'm good though. It's the corners where you're going to have issues. I'm not too worried about the straight bits. I know they're fine. I also want to make sure that I'm not seeing any of my basting thread, because I want to make sure I've sewn all of that into the pockets as well. And we're good. So, that's that done. Now we need to bind it. So I'm going to start roughly in the bottom. I have the square facing me and I go clockwise. For no other reason than that's the direction that we're going to sew it. So I like to pin it down the same way. So you can use bias binding for this. It doesn't have to be polyester binding. I just like that idea because it's probably more waterproof and resistant. And considering that these are probably gym bags or overnight bags, you don't want it going yucky. Where possible, you want to trim off these tails too, because they can just get troublesome later. So I do use a lot of clips to put on my binding because I don't want it to move. Grab some more clips. I have to do this in my lap, so I'm really sorry that you can't really see what I'm doing, but it's a big bag, and if I put it on the table, you're not going to see much anyway, to be honest. So I'm just threading it around, making sure that I'm putting it evenly on both sides. Then when I get back to the start, I just want to go over it a little bit more, but less than probably an inch. You just want to overlap a little bit. I'm going to melt the end of mine. If you're using bias binding, just tuck the end under. And you totally can use bias binding. Like if you're not using a waterproof canvas and you want to do something crazy and fun on the inside, I fully support that decision. I love crazy and fun. Alright, so I'm going to start where the join is because I like to. You don't have to. And then I'm just going to stitch, again, 1/4 inch from the edge. So from the outer edge though. So it doesn't matter that there'll be a little bit of overhang because this is 1 inch binding, or 1/2 inch. You can make smaller binding if you wish. And it just wouldn't have as much of an overhang, but to be honest, nobody's going to notice. It's still going to look nice. And I am packing up my clips as I go. I'm also cutting off that tail so that it won't annoy me when I get to it. One last corner. At least I know I won't run out of bobbin thread this time. Back to to the start and back stitch. And then we're going to go and check and see if I missed anywhere from the other side. And we are good. So that's one side in. Yay! Pop that aside again. I'm going to put that down and we're going to grab all of the rest of it. So you should have an exterior, a lining, a big pocket piece, and this, and some zipper tape. I need to cut my zipper tape. That last piece of strapping is the shoulder strap. You've seen me make it in a lot of other videos. I can't actually make it today because I'm still waiting on the clips. They have been posted. It could be the mail that I'm getting today. Who knows? These things are a mystery sometimes. So I got my zipper tape. And I grabbed my zipper pull and put one on. Bring it down. Doesn't matter where we put it at the moment. We just need to make sure that it's on. That is the important part of this. Then we're going to take our bottom strip. So this is just as wide as the zipper. So if you've got skinnier or thicker tape, depending on what size zip you're using, you may just need to adjust the thickness of this. The length should still remain the same. So, lining it up at the end, like this. And then putting this one right sides down, because again with the zipper sandwich, like that. And we're going to stitch like that. Trim. We're going to pull it back and top stitch it, because we all know I love a good top stitch. Then we're going to come and bring, so we're going to straighten out the zip, make sure there's no twists. Then we're going to put lining sides up, zipper right sides up. And then again with this, now this one will be easier because it's longer. So the idea is it's going to come around and line up. And if you do it like that where there's no twists, even though it looks like there is one, ignore that. And then we're going to stitch the end. And even off camera, I still stretch it out and then bring it round. Because now if I pull that, there is no twist. So that is the little trick. Trim off the tails. I've top stitched it. It's pretty. Now, we are going to start with our exterior. We are going to line up the center bottom along here like this with the pretty side touching the mesh like that. And I am just going to stitch this down. Just slightly short of the fabric. Now there is method to my madness, I promise. We're going to stitch that down. Now we're going to go and find like the center points of everything and add some clips to it. You could do this first. Sometimes I find the clips get in my way and they annoy me, so that's why I haven't. And then bring that down in the center, come out to the side, and you'll notice I'm putting a clip on each side because the other side, it's easier to work out now than later, I promise. So then again, clip, zip, done. So now again, we need the center top and the center sides. It's all about the middle of everything because it's the easiest way to work it out. Work from midpoints. So we've got that, and this one is now attached. I know it seems like a crazy idea, but just bear with me. We are now also going to separate the zipper. Then, with right sides down, I'm going to come here and I'm going to join there to there. I'm going to add a few extra clips because it helps to reinforce the idea that it's going to stay put. And then if you want to, we can do this corner. Now, it's not going to look like it doesn't fit, so what we're going to do is we're going to push it so that it's kind of curved and sitting more like a 3D object. And then we're going to add our clips, and you're going to find that's going to work out way better for you. So then again, we're going to come to this top one, making sure there's no twist in the zipper. Put it right sides down. And then you can move out to the corner, and it's going to look really tight, right? If I hold it like that, it's going to look like it's not going to fit. But then we're going to kind of just basically scrunch up the fabric so it goes in and becomes more 3D-like instead of flat. And that's going to help you get that zip on nice and easy. Look at that. Now, it does take a little bit of practice, so don't be disheartened if the first time you try it, it doesn't go on that easy. Everything takes practice, but I promise it is much easier to put the zip on like this. So this is the same idea as the zip in Harridan that everybody doesn't like. It is tricky, but it is worth it because it looks awesome. Also try and be very, very accurate with this zipper. The other ones are a lot more forgiving. This one, not so much. You also don't want your zipper to be right on a curve because that's going to make that tricky too. Just food for thought. Alright, so now that the zipper is on and I'm happy with the way it's sitting, we're just going to tuck the other half into the pocket so it gets out of our way. And then we're going to take our lining piece, and if it's directional, think about that. And I'm going to clip it just over where the stitches ended from our exterior attachment, and that's going to create like a gap here. You don't have to stitch it, but I have found it is a lot easier to do it my way. So you are welcome to just leave a gap and tuck both of it, but you'll get a straighter edge if you do it the way I've just done it now. Because I've tried different methods. And I'm no expert, so trial and error is how I run my life. And this is the one that's so far the best possible way that I've found to do it. Now obviously that could change if I come up with a better method in the future, but for now, this is what we've got. You really want to make sure that the zipper tape, the zipper teeth, aren't going to get stitched when you go around this corner too, because I can feel them being naughty. And yes, zipper teeth can be naughty. So the straight bits are easy enough, it's just those curves. And this one's going to be extra tricky because the zip's not open. But that's right, we will survive. So there you go. So we're going to leave this gap down the bottom. Now the bigger the gap, the easier it is to turn, but also the trickier it is to tuck it under, especially if you're not using a waterproof canvas. I've done this a few times now, so I don't have a lot of issues, but putting that zip on is probably the trickiest part of the bag. Everything else is a breeze. So we're just stitching around. Now I'm right near the zipper pull. It's there. I'm making sure it's not trying to get in my way. And again, I am running the edge of the foot against the zipper teeth, which for this particular foot is creating a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Alright, too many clips, they're getting in my way now, so I've got to put them back into Scully. And then when we get here, we're going to backstitch. So now we've created our own gap. Just feeling around to make sure I haven't stitched the corners because that would suck. I've also missed a little bit here because of this zipper pull. So I'm just going to go back over that. It does happen. Nobody's perfect. Don't stress about it. Alright. gather it up like a sock and then just push the corner out is the way that I have found works best. And then if all has gone to plan, you should have a beautiful zipper pull. All has not gone to plan, ladies and gentlemen. See here, I got too close to the zipper teeth. So, it's actually not such a big deal. I'm actually just going to unpick it from the outside. Because I'm going to top stitch this, I can actually just wiggle that out and top stitch it back in place. So I'm not as worried as, you know, I probably should be. It'll be fine. Right, so just wiggle that out like that. See, crisis averted. It was what, 4 stitches? Maybe 5. That was the 5th one there. So, now that that's out, I can wiggle that corner and see how it just kind of popped a little bit. And now it's out and beautiful. So, don't let things stress you. I don't. Now, next. So, we've got the problem of we have an open gap. So what we want to do is fold that seam allowance in and then tuck this one under. Now, because this is waterproof canvas, I should just be able to finger press a really nice crease so it all stays where it's told. If you're using cotton, iron this so that it will stay where it's told, because it needs to stay where it's told. Another option that you can do is add a little bit of double-sided tape on the inside. In fact, we might do that. Let's do that. Because I haven't tried that way before, so I want to see how successful it's going to be. Where's the bottom? Here. So, on the fold is where I want to put the tape. So I'm just going to cut a piece. And I'm going to stick it so that it won't be seen from the outside like that. And it obviously hasn't even gone the whole way, but if it's most of it's holding, it should be fine. All right, tuck it under, stick it down. Look at that. Perfect. Knew it'd work. But I should always test my theories. So now, from the outside, right side up, I am going to top stitch all the way around. So this is now going to close the gap at the bottom, and it's going to fix my little corner that I had a bit of drama with. So rather than unpicking the whole thing and re-stitching it all, I just tucked it back under. Along we go. Now I'm going to show you up close the corner that I just unpicked the things and left. So that is the corner that I unpicked because it was stuck. You can't even tell. It's awesome. All right, so that was the tricky bit. From here, it's all easy breezy lemon squeezy. This is the pocket piece for the shoe pocket. It is huge, yes I know, but it's meant to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to put wrong sides together. And this is where people get tricky. This is what's called a French seam. So we're going to stitch it twice so there's no raw edges. So I'm going to go right on a 1/4 inch and we're going to stitch it together. Like that, and back stitch. Then I'm going to grab this end and do the same thing. You could also just bind this if you wanted to, by the way. I had that thought about 10 minutes ago. You could just put binding and Bob's your uncle, but we're not doing that. Now I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to cut off a bit of the seam allowance. Now, I know this might be like, why didn't you just do a less seam allowance? The simple answer is because this is actually easier. Good. So I cut off about half. Now, we're going to turn it in the other way. And then right on that fold, or that seam, we're going to fold it, and then we're going to stitch a 1/4 inch a second time. So the reason we chopped off the first lot is so it won't poke through the seam. And so now, no raw edges on the inside of the pocket or the outside of the pocket, because we see both in this bag. Back stitch. Done. Now I know it looks like a big pocket, but it's got to cover the whole entrance. So now on the inside, perfect seam, and on the outside, no raw edge. But again, if you wanted to, you could just do binding. It's entirely up to you. Now for the fun bit. So I'm going to find the center points, again, like we do for everything. Good. There and there. So now I've got our 4 center points because the zip is the other top one, by the way. And then we want to put these seams together and find the center points here. Now you want the seams to actually be the side points, so I'm cutting the top and the bottom right now. Oops. So now I've got my 2 center points here. And I've got all my center point. Well, I don't have the bottom one. I'm about to have the bottom center point. That's fine. Now we have all the center points here. So we're going to start with our flap. You do need to make sure that it is zipped open. It is important to be zipped open. And I'm going to go to the bottom. And with right sides together, I'm going to put the whole thing in and clip it together at the bottom. Now, this is going to be surprisingly easy to clip. Even though the other one was tricky, because it's open, it's more fluid with its shape. So I'm going to come and I'm going to join the next side piece like this. And then you can just clip along. And look how easy this is being. Because it's open, it's not so stuck as a square. So it's just easier. We've done the tricky bit, guys. So then again, center at the top where the teeth are. Grab some more clips, clip around and around. And we just go between the points and clip it all together. Good. Like so. And then last little section. Alright, so now that I've got that clipped on, we are now going to take our pocket and I'm going to match up, and I'm just going to push the whole pocket in as well. So it goes inside, and I'm going to match up this top point here. And I'm going to do 3 clips, and I know this is really tricky to see. Maybe I can bring you closer. Oops. Let's bring you closer so that you can see a bit better. Alright, so I've clipped the top. Now, I'm going to go to the center bottom, which is there, and clip that in as well. And then we just add this to the clips as we go around. So all the layers are in. And see how it's fluid and just easier to clip? Everything just moves smoother because the zip is open. And then when the zipper closes, it brings back structure to the side of the bag. Actually, I did forget to say, if you wanted a super stiff side, you could also add base stabilizer. I would just make it slightly smaller than the seam allowance. And then iron some base stabilizer into the sides if you wanted them like super stiff. You could also like insert plastic or whatever floats your boat really. Now, if all's gone to plan, that should just like smoothly add in. So now we're gonna stitch with our 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now the reason it has to be 1/4 inch is because there's a zip here, so you've got no other choice but to do it. So basically push up against the zip and go to town. And we're gonna just keep bringing it around like we did before. And also just be really conscious where the zipper pull is, because the first time I made this bag, I broke a needle and stabbed a hole halfway through a zipper pull because I wasn't paying attention. So learn from my mistakes. Again, we're bringing it around, just stitching it down. It's looking awesome. We're tightening our clips as we go, or we're going to drop even more things. We're back to the start, we're going to backstitch. Now, before we put the binding on, we are again going to open the bag and check it to make sure that nothing's popping out anywhere. But we are good. So, now we just add our binding again. And again, see how it's easy. The trickiest bit was the other half of the outer piece when we put the zip on. This side's the easy bit. Which is good, because I would hate for the very last step of the bag to be super, super hard. It would deter a lot of people. You'd get to the end and then give up. That's not what we need. So again, with the binding, and this will just hide all your raw edges. It will also, because we're going to stitch a second time, it's going to reinforce that side, because then we're going to have 2 rounds of stitching. Again, not that I'm worried. The only thing my husband broke, and he had a lot of stuff. He had like 3 pairs of shoes and a bunch of weights, and his weight belt is like thick leather. So he had a lot attached to it. And the only thing that broke was the original way I had done the D-ring connectors. So, yay. You can also make this bag if you don't want to use 2-inch straps. If you don't want the thicker straps, you can do thin ones. You could just do 1.5 inches or 38 mil. It would also be fine. I just like the idea of a thick strap because some people will be putting a lot of weight, and so you can distribute the weight more with a wider strap. That was my whole logic there. But like I said, you don't have to. Chop it off where it's going to overlap a little bit. Singe the end just a little bit. Actually, I'm going to need them, aren't I? And then overlap and clip down. And voila, we are done. So now we just stitch this. So again, with the 1/4 inch from the outer edge, we're not going on the inner edge. In fact, the inner edges are relevant. We're all about the outer edge. Alternatively, you can also just run your foot up against your zipper because it's going to do the same thing. And we're just bringing it around because it is a big 3D object. Also, try and keep your clips out of the way or they make funny noises. going to trim off those tails because they are in my way. Ta-da! We are done. Trim off those tails properly. So now we're going to open this and turn it all the way through. I'm just making a fist and pushing. Nothing fancy about that. And I'm going to push out all my corners so that it's going to sit nicely. So like that. And then I'm going to push in my side pocket. Now the other thing about the binding is it does help to give it structure. So that's another good thing about it. And then we're just going to, now the first time always takes a minute until the bag gets into its shape. But then, voila, look at that. And pocket! And so then when you open it, it's got the pocket that is here. So this is the pocket here. And so it's separated. I think it's wonderful. Right. Then I just smooth out the bottom and we are all done. Oh my goodness, you know what I've done? I forgot one of my zipper pulls on this pocket. But that's alright. I'm just going to unpick there, put it on, and then stitch it back up. Bugger. Can't believe I missed that. I was even thinking about it before. I'm like, I'm sure I had another zipper pull. I do. It's supposed to be there. But that's alright. I can fix that. I'm going to show you how we're going to fix it. So, I'm going to the end I want to insert it onto, which is this end. And I've grabbed onto where it is. So here's where the zipper is. So I'm going to push, pinch, and pull through. So this is the section I want to unstitch. So I need to unstitch a little bit more of the binding than the fabric because I need to be able to push it out of the way. So I'm just going to make a clip. This is a great teaching moment, actually. I don't have to undo the whole bag. I'm not overly angry about it, and it's only going to be like a 5-minute fix. This is also true if you have somebody's bag and their zipper fell off and you need to install a new one. This is also what you would do to a finished bag. So we're just going to unpick about 3 or 4 inches, which is about 10 centimeters worth of stitching, so that I can really push that binding out of the way. I'm just going to snip it because it's easier. I don't like having to unpick all the stitches. It's easy to trim them and then just pull them out later. Okay, so the binding is now off. I can feel, here's the thick part, which means that's where the zipper is. So now I'm just going to undo all of the stitching I've got here. So I'm just unpicking this stitching now until I can get to the zipper. It should be right about here. Alright, so I open it up, and where's the zipper? I know it's here somewhere. It'll be hidden under this one. Right, so there's another layer of stitching I have to undo, but I can see the zipper now. So I'm just going to undo this stitching as well. And you'll notice my stitching that I'm undoing is getting smaller and smaller because I just need to get to the zipper. So we started wide so I can push that out of the way. And there's my zipper right there. So I'm just going to undo. Actually, I think we're good. So I can see it now. I can come back to the outside even. So I can see it. There's my zip. I've accessed it. So now all I have to do is put a zipper pull on. Now it's going to be a little bit trickier than when it's not attached to a giant bag, but it is still very doable. And I will not be unstitching anymore, I don't think. I need to be able to see down the zipper. In fact, I do need to stitch. I need to unstitch just a little bit more here because it's being a little bit too restricting with my movement of the zipper. So I've got probably an inch either side of the zip. I'm going to put one side on. I'm going to get the other side and feed it in. Now I can undo more if I need to. I need to be able to, or when I do zips, I need to be over the top of it. But the other option is the zipper jig might be super handy right now. So if I don't get it this time, I'm going to grab the zipper jig and we're going to do that. And this is what happens when Tori's too excited about a bag, by the way. I get sidetracked. I'm like, oh, let's do the next bit. And I just forget zippers. At least I didn't forget the D-rings. That would have been way harder to fix, by the way. I could do it, but it would be harder. All right, let's get my zipper jig. It's covered in magnets, but that's fine. I'm going to bring it here so you can see what I'm going to do. I'm going to stand up because, again, I like to be over it. I'm going to put my zip in right side up, like that. Then I'm going to grab the bits and then feed them both in. Basically, your zipper jig is just a third hand. Nope, missed. I missed one side. Does anybody else hear that beeping? It is driving me nuts and I don't know what appliance is making it. Oh, come on. Now you're just being difficult for difficult's sake. Alright, so worst case scenario is I'm going to snip a little bit more of the stitching. Just because I need to be able to bring it out and in. It will go on. I am determined. I am not unpulling the whole bag to put on a zipper pull. I can hear it's on. Ta-da! Right, so the zipper jig was very, very helpful for that. But it's on. So we're good. Yay! And so now I just go back inside the bag and stitch up the 3 or 4 inches I unstitched. Really wasn't so bad. So before I put the binding on, I want to come and line everything up nicely. So if I hold that, yeah, we're good. And then we're just going to put it back together exactly how it was. It's like Humpty Dumpty, but we can put it back together again. So I'm going to add lots of clips. They're going to be really close together, and because they're holding a small area that I need to stitch. Actually, I'm only going to put 2 clips on, but they are close together. Then I'm going to come down here. I'm going to stitch, back stitch, stitch around. Right, so that's not the binding, that's just stitching it back together. Before I go any further, I'm going to turn it and make sure that I got it all. Right? Which I totally did, and you totally can't even tell that anything has happened. Then again with some clips, I'm going to clip the binding down and just stitch back over it. And nobody except the whole internet would be any wiser that it ever happened. So that would also be how you fix a zip in a bag that you have bought from a shop. Just as like a fun little side sewing candy. take off all those tails that I can now see. Turn it back out the right way. And now we're done. Love it. So there you go, guys. You'll just need to give the bag a bit of like a Tory squish at the seams so that it sits straighter. But that is the bag complete. Thank you for joining me on this mission and a half. But yeah, the bag is done and I think it's fabulous. And there is a shoulder strap, but again, I don't have the hardware to show you how to do that. So that will just be a sewing candy for another day. All right, guys, bye-bye.